Greetings, everyone. This is Elizabeth. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to have you with me. We are going to delve into dry embossing, and this is part of my embossing series. It's a little mini series, and my first video was about powder embossing, where you put the powders down and heat them to solidify them. Dry embossing today is just commonly known as embossing. They completely dropped the dry part because it does encompass quite a bit. And embossing, what you're doing is texturing the paper to have a raised surface. And with powder embossing, stenciling with gel paste, those are also methods of embossing. Dry embossing began old school. People had to do this by hand, and this process can be dated back. You ready for some history? Whew. Here we go. Ready? Embossing can be traced back to the 15th century, at which time it was highly sought after. It was perceived as a sign of sophistication since it was expensive and very limited. So your noblemen, hierarchies, all the people with money, with big businesses, they were the ones with that special stationery that had that embossed emblem on the top. You will see embossing on old ship maps and stuff. Just a sign of the trade for the artist who was doing the maps. And a way to just embellish that and make it stand out amongst everything else at the time. Towards the end of the 18th century, books for the blind were being produced after Valentine Hayou, Hayuy, invented the process of embossing letters from the standard Roman alphabet on paper, and that was in 1784. And what he did is he put the plates down, did what he needed to do, and it pushed the letters up. And so the blind person could feel the shape of each letter and was able to then read some books. And of course, we know how that's progressed into Braille, but again, that's an embossing texture where they've raised the surface of the paper. And then we move forward to 1815, the method of adding texture via embossing began to pick up interest and experimentation began. And at this point, they were doing paper, and then somebody's like, wait a minute, what else can we emboss? And now we have glass that has that raised texture, wood, metal, anything that they could give a raised texture to via different methods and whatnot. That's what they were doing back in 1815. They were playing around, adding some flair to the product and making their brand really stand out with embossing. Fast forward to 1977 to the home of LaDorna and Bob Eichenberg. Sorry if I butchered your name, Eichenbergs. And their creation of the Ellison letter machine. They developed this little guy, or big guy. I've never seen one, so I don't know the size, but I'm thinking it was probably pretty good size. Their Ellison letter machine, they designed it to improve the life of teachers. How cool is that? They're like, you know what? These classrooms, these teachers are cutting out these letters, to make signs and whatnot. What can we do to improve that? And that's where they went. And their letter machine was able to use steel rule dies. They still make those today. You can find them all over. And it's a padded platform with a steel rule die. So it has the cutting blade. And with the pressure of the machine and the paper on top, it sandwiched everything and cut right through. Because of this invention, Let me backtrack. Let me stay on course here. So they wanted to make life better for teachers. Their machines use steel rolled dies to cut shapes and letters out in mass quantity. This machine was the gateway to all home use die cutting machines. Sizzix, I think, from my research, I could be wrong, but from what I found, Sizzix was the first to bring the die cutting machine into our homes. And as time moved forward, so did technology, and we were introduced then again to the electronic die cutting machine. So we went from steel roll dies to thinlits that we all use and love to electronic die cutting machines where now you can put your image in there and mass cut them out electronically. No hand cranking, no nothing. So all this technology, okay, fabulous door openers, people using it, improving it, trying new things, all to make life easier and more accessible to other artists and crafters. Now, in our home die cutting machines, let me zoom out just a hair, okay? I have the old Cricut Cuttlebug. I do believe it's Cricut. And what these machines did is they were literally usable. The Sizzix ones, of course, when they first came out, even now, they still have huge, big platforms. But the process is you have your rollers on the inside, top and bottom, okay? And they put the pressure. So you make a sandwich with their plates, okay? You make a sandwich with their plates. You put your paper, your die, your embossing folder, whatever you've got, and you send it through. And that pressure sucks it down and either cuts it or embosses it. And that's what we're talking about today, is the embossing. I'll put this guy away. So embossing folders are the thing. Now, these were created because somebody who was doing it by hand was like, I'm tired of doing this by hand. How can we make this more easier for people just to, get it done in minutes instead of hours? And so what they did is they created these. They have an embossed and a debossed side. So when that paper is in there and you close it and put that pressure in there, it is shoving, the embossed side is shoving the paper into the debossed side. And so you're able to get this beautiful raised, even. It's just gorgeous, okay? And you can, certain ones, of course, word ones you can't, but you can use it as a debossed. A pattern like this, you could definitely use the opposite side as a debossed. And debossed is just opposite of embossed. Embossed, you have the hills. Debossed, you have the valleys, okay? Now, in letterpress, oops, where's my sample? Uh-oh. Okay, hold on one moment, please. Letterpressing, I found my sample, was also commonly used because that was really easy to take an image and shove it down into the paper. And this is the debossed method. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that because I have, I'm gonna zoom down just a little. Okay, so there it is, and it's valleys. It's not raised up, they're valleys. So if we put ink on the stamp and stamped it into the paper, the ink would be below the surface. Whereas this, if we ran ink over the top, the ink would be above the surface of the paper. So if we ran some ink on this, only the raised parts would get some ink, versus down into the paper. And letterpress, I will be doing a video on that. It's just a different technique. It's the other half of the embossing folder. You know, they're using the embossed only and shoving it down into the paper to get these fabulous techniques. Now, this is no longer being produced, but if you find it at a thrift store or on a D-stash somewhere, I think you might have fun with this. And we can use our die cutting machines that we already have. So we're gonna go old school, okay? And old school is something that we can still do today. Hold on one moment, please. Sorry about that. It is a roasting oven in this attic. I'm thinking I need to, I might need to move down into the lower level of the house with my craft room. But for now, hata. Okay, so back in the day, before we had the letterpress and the die cutting machines, we had artists doing this by hand, and they took tools very similar to these. I mean, these haven't changed over the years. And you can even buy brand new ones from Sizzix. They have a huge ball. They're using them to give detail to butterflies and flowers, to give them texture and stuff. And that's what they did back in the day. Different sizes give you different results. I've had these guys for years. And before, you know, there was plastic stencils, they had brass stencils. And here's one here, and we're going to do a little sample with that one. But I'll show you some of the ones that I have in my collection. And you can use them with inks. Back in the day, I wasn't very, if I'm not mistaken, this was a white pigment, and it did not want to come off, but I used them to make wedding cards. But you can use them with paint. You can use them just like a regular stencil, only these were brass stencils. And this one here is my oldest one, 1982. I know we're awfully bright, but can we just be kind and no, but so I've got 1982, 1990s, 2004, 91. I know I've got one that's a 2008. Oh, that one's a 2008. So this was what we were doing back when I first started crafting. We didn't have the die cutting machine. We had these. And so let me show you how that worked. So back in the day, the artist would create a template, and then they would either tape it to a window or do some sort of table, maybe with a candle or something in there, so you could see through it. They were very very crafty back then too. I am using my new Cricut light table. It's new because it's less than a year. Is it less than a year old for me? I do have light tables that are extremely old. But any light source would do. And you can see how you can see the flower in there. And then what you would do is you pick your tools and you would just follow the paper right along the edge of the design. Okay. And if you found your tool was too small, you can move to a bigger one. And you only have to do the edge. This is a very interesting technique, okay? You only have to do the edge. I find like little short jaggy motions works best because this is the back side. Okay, we're working to emboss our design. And so we just go around the edge like so. Oops. And if you go in the middle, it doesn't hurt it at all. And then we'll flip it over in just 1 second. Let me finish off this leaf like so. Okay, and then when you flip it and reveal it, let me turn off that light. You now have a raised texture. And this right here is, like I said, it's been simplified with the embossing folder and your new home tools. Okay, your embossing machine, your die cutting machine, however you want to call it. I use mine a lot for embossing, but yeah. So you could definitely do personalized stuff and whatnot with that. And then the cool thing is, if you find these at yard sales or whatnot, don't hesitate to grab them, because you don't have to do this. Okay, you don't have to do it by hand. You have your die cutting machine. I'll show you in a minute how we can use that. Now this one, oops, I have nope, I did not misplace them. I just kind of buried them. Okay, you can even do this with stencils. Okay, here's a little bit thicker stencil. The thicker ones, I think, give a better design. Okay, and because this image is pretty big, we're gonna grab our bigger end stylus. And like I said, Sizzix just released a new stylus that's huge. And what they were doing is they'll cut out their flowers and then use the stylus just like this and rub out areas, and it would just bring a new look to the butterfly or the flower they've cut out. They give it like this movement and life to the image. So this is all we do. We just rub around. Okay, we're not pushing too terribly hard. Just like so. I went around it a couple times, and bam, we have a nice embossed flower. Now this one was pretty easy. So this would be super easy to do all over a full page, you know, just to add. And how cute would it be to stamp a little critter in your flowers or something? And the best part is, simple shapes like this, you can cut out of super thick paper and make your own stencil. Just like this, cut it out, and you can do this. Make your own stencil. I just said that. To make your own creations with your electronic cutting machine. Okay, and you can do it with thin. This one is much thinner than this one. I know you guys can't really tell, but I can feel it. This one's much thinner. And again, you just put it down, you figure out where you want it. Okay, turn on the light again and see, we can see that. And this one, we would just use our smaller tool. Like I said, little jerky motions, sketchy works best for me. Okay, so you bring a new life into your stencil. And again, texture paste would also put raised. It would just be a different effect using your texture paste. Go like this, and then like that. And then we've added more texture to our paper. And this gives us a little bit more freedom. So if you like something in it, but don't want the whole thing, you can definitely add just a hint of texture to your art project by doing this simple method. Now, some of it is more detailed and, you know, you're like, I want the whole image, but I don't want to spend all day doing it, okay? And I'm going to show you with technology how we can simplify the process. We're going to pop open our little Cuttlebug or whatever die cutting system you have, okay? And you might have to play around with your sandwich, okay? I definitely did. And I found that if I had my base plate, B plate, these are Spellbinders tan mats. They came out when all this stuff came out, okay? The tan mats. And this is what they were using them for, okay? So I've got that taped on there because remember I started that. I'm going to put that right on there. And then I'm going to get my other B plate. Now, if I put this messy B plate on there, these lines are going to show up into my flower. So if I don't want texture on my flower, I'm going to put the clean B plate. And we'll just put the dirty one on the bottom. Just like so. And you know what? I'll put this on here backwards. I need the handle to me, okay? So we've made our sandwich. For the Cuttlebug, we have A, B, 2 tan mats, and another B. And it's going to be a nice and snug, not too hard to crank, okay? And there we have it, okay? And because it is a brass and it is small, it has indented the whole thing. I feel like maybe this one is, yeah, that might help. Okay, so what you can do now, and be wary because the pressure from the tape will definitely do that. But if you trim right around the edge, you've just made a tag. How cool is that with your old school brass stencil? Okay, and then you've got that. Now you're like, okay, what about these? Because we like that look, but we don't want to hand do the whole thing. So you put your paper down, put your stencil down how you want it, okay? Maybe I want it off-centered just a wee bit, okay? Maybe down this way. As long as it fits in the sandwich, like so. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna run it through. Oops. Well, we're gonna run it through when I have it. My little doodads all lined up and not sticking out all wonky. Okay. And you can see the tan mat is stretching. That means we're getting a good squish. And that's what we want. And good squish, stuck to the mat. Okay. So instead of hand doing all of that work, because you want the whole design, you just put your little stencil right on your paper, right on your tan mat, and send that sucker through, and you just saved hours, hours of work. Now, this method is not as pristine and beautiful as either embossing or letter pressing, okay? Because that is a more even, where this, we're using the pressure and it's kind of squishy and movie. So you do get highs and lows, okay? But it's still really pretty, okay? And it is definitely not as high as this, okay? And that's what you're gonna get with your embossing plates or your folders, your embossing folders, okay? And you can get these suckers anywhere. Literally, any craft place has got them. They're really nice because you can just add so much fun so quick. Okay. All right. Well, that is that for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and keep a lookout for those brass stencils because they can do such beautiful work. And because they're a little bit thicker and sturdier, you are going to get a better impression if you run it through your machine. Or if you don't have a machine and you want to do embossing, this is a good start. All you need is a stylus. Yes, these are called stylus before stylus became stylus. Stylus, stencil, and paper. Now your paper, I forgot to mention, you don't want it too thin because it will rip. You do not want it super thick because then you won't be able to get the impressions that you want. I was using Nina 80-pound Classic Crest for my examples today. 65, 85, kind of pushing at 100 of not working. Definitely watercolor wouldn't work. However, watercolor through this method might work. But that would be another video to see all the different types of papers. And letterpress definitely works better on a thicker paper. And the letterpress even comes with thicker paper. This is almost watercolor paper because it is shoving the particles of the paper down and compressing them more in order to make those valleys. So if you're doing a method, definitely check what type of paper you're using. The heavier papers, when you're using your machine, give it a mist. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. You mist it very easy, just like that. So you get this light mist of water, and it relaxes the paper so that when it runs through the machine, you're going to get a nice, beautiful, crisp image. And that's exactly what I did with those. Okay. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Thick paper, mist it. And I hope you enjoyed doing some embossing the old school way. If you like the video, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell. I do lives every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I am trying to put out content every week, at least 2 or 3 videos. And we will see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.